Hello, welcome back to my haunted library. It's Regina. So, for the month of October, for the Halloween season, a lot of us are watching horror movies. I mean, most horror fans watch them all year long, let's be honest. But this year I decided to do something a little different, and I'm doing some themes. So, what I'm trying to do is watch all the Frankenstein movies that I haven't seen or that I haven't seen in a while. So, of course, when we talk about Frankenstein films, we immediately think of the Boris Karloff films, which of course are classics, where the creature is more of like a monster. The wonderful film that Kenneth Branagh made, Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. I've seen that movie many times. I love it. And some of the comedies like Abbott and Costello, Meet Frankenstein, and of course, the great Young Frankenstein. But this time around, I was looking for films that I either hadn't seen for a long time or that I'd never seen that had a Frankenstein theme. So first up is a movie that, well, it's actually a TV movie or like a TV miniseries that I remember watching in the 70s, and I loved it then. And I just rewatched it after all that time, and that is Frankenstein, the True Story. It's a 1973 British-American made-for-television horror film loosely based on the 1818 novel Frankenstein, or The Modern Prometheus, directed by Jack Smite. And the screenplay, interestingly enough, was written by Christopher Isherwood, who wrote the Cabaret stories, the Berlin stories. Is that what they're called? The I Am the Camera, Stories of Berlin. I can't quite remember, but it's what Cabaret is based on. So the film stars Leonard Whiting as Victor Frankenstein. He played Romeo in Franco Zeffirelli's Romeo and Juliet. A gorgeous Jane Seymour as Prima. James Mason plays a Dr. Polidori. So they brought in the character of Polidori, who of course is a real person. He wrote a vampire story. And he was there in the infamous weekend on Lake Geneva with the Shelleys and with Byron. He was Byron's personal physician, traveling companion, very interesting characters. James Mason plays this character really to the hilt and very campy. He's almost like a Dr. Phibes kind of character. Michael Sarrazin, who plays the creature, he was a real heartthrob in the 70s. I watched a lot of 70s movies with him in it, and he's very good. And then there are also like famous actors like Agnes Moorehead, Ralph Richardson as the blind man, and so on. It has that square aspect ratio like old television, and it's very lo-fi, not high definition at all. Rather fuzzy. And something else that I found annoying was it looks like it was cut up more. Like you can tell when it cuts to commercial, but some of the cuts seemed so quick, it looks like sections were missing. And I just remember, now it was a long time ago, since 1973, but when I was a kid, I really believed it was much longer, especially with the Jane Seymour character. I just remember her character being more developed, taking up more screen time. Of course, that could have just me being completely enamored by her character, and I was again. So despite all of those problems with the film, it was definitely worth a watch. My husband watched it with me. We were both like glued to the screen. It's really a great script. It kind of has, which I found interesting for the 70s, it almost has like a homoerotic quality to it with the creature and the doctor. It's subtly done, but it's definitely there. So like in all the Frankenstein stories, starting with the source material, there is this theme of the neglected child. That Victor Frankenstein he's like God, he's the modern Prometheus, but he is the father, and he's not a very good parent because, like in this story, Michael Sarrazin, when he's born as the creature, he's perfect. His 70s dry look hair is like perfectly coiffed. He's got the beautiful mouth, and the first word he learns is what Victor says to him is beautiful, and he repeats it back, beautiful. And there's like almost a feeling that they fall in love at that moment. Victor Frankenstein is not that interested in Elizabeth, his wife, or his fiancée. And she is kind of portrayed as a bit of a nag in this, although she is like the good woman, the solid woman who just wants a normal life. And Victor is, of course, obsessed with his creation. So again, you find in the story the neglectful parent theme. As soon as the creature starts having problems, the creator, the father, the parent loses interest. And so we have a great empathy for the creature, and all he wants is to be loved, like any child would want to be loved. He's born perfect, but then he starts rotting, and Victor becomes repulsed. And just like, I don't want to deal with this, problem child anymore. Can he just go away? And then you get the rejection, and then you get the revenge. So I think one thing that's so enduring about this story is it's about that neglected child and the different stages that child goes through, from love to hurt to grief to vengeance. And if you think about it, we've seen this story played out in people's lives. We've seen this story played out in literature, and it's very poignant, and I think that's what always draws me back to it. So I would recommend Frankenstein, the true story, if you can tolerate some of the not so great qualities of the film. I'm hoping that maybe there is a definitive version out there somewhere. I'll keep looking for it. If it's not out there, I would really hope that someone would take on this project again and recut it and give it a new, fresh look. Remaster it, all that stuff. It would definitely be worth it. So let me know if you've seen Frankenstein, the true story. If for the people who are a little older, you may remember watching it on TV like I did. Here's my little stuffed Frankenstein by my side here. All right, so next up we have a film that's relatively new, 2019, Depraved by Larry Fessenden, starring David Call and Joshua Leonard, is a modern version of Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. Larry Fessenden is an American independent filmmaker out of New York. He does a lot of very low-budget films, mostly horror films, based in New York. Really excellent work. If you're not aware of him, he did a film called The Wendigo, or just Wendigo, a few years ago. That's really good. He did a film that takes place in the North Pole too, so it's not all his films aren't all shot in New York. He also did a really cool vampire film back in the 90s, I believe. I can't remember the name of that film. I'm going to put it right there because I've seen that film a couple times. His films are very low budget, so they have that kind of feel to them. So you can't go in expecting like a Hollywood film. So off the bat, if you're going to watch Depraved, you should know that, because some of the effects, don't have that. They look like they were done on his computer, which I'm sure they were, but that doesn't mean that they're not good films. I always enjoy his vision. And this one, as I was watching it, I'm like, is he going to pull me in? And it really did, but it kind of took almost to the end of the film where it really started to grab me. So let's take a look at Depraved. Here's the basic plot. Suffering from PTSD following his stint as an army medic, Henry now works feverishly in his Brooklyn laboratory to forget the death he witnessed overseas by creating life in the form of a man cobbled together from body parts. After procuring a brain from an unwitting victim, his creation, Adam, is born. But it soon seems that giving life to Adam was the easy part. Teaching him how to live in a dark and troubled world may be perilous. The first part of the movie is pretty slow pace, but doesn't mean it's not interesting, of the creature kind of learning to function, and he is heavily scarred all over his body. So they're really showing the scars. Henry has a partner who's been financing this project, and he's tied in with some some drug company, and is the kind of corrupt money man in the operation. And then the Elizabeth character, I think her name is Liz, is sympathetic toward the creature. The creature decides that he wants a bride. So it really pretty much follows that same plot as the original Frankenstein. But the way he tries to go about getting a bride does not really work out too well. Again, we see the problem child emerge, and even in the dialogue, we see someone saying to Henry, "You're a good scientist, but you're not much of a father." Because once they're over the initial wonder of what they created, it's all about his ego. The Frankenstein, Dr. Frankenstein, is often portrayed. I mean, this is the character of this one rogue scientist, this one man who has the gall to become like God. But of course, like Prometheus, he has to pay for the sin of being godlike. So what he does may advance civilization, like Prometheus bringing fire to the earth. He has to pay for his hubris. And you see this theme worked out in this movie in an interesting way, too. Larry Fessenden's films always really have this great like climax build toward the end. They're very well structured. I really like his films. I would highly recommend Depraved if you're looking for a new take on Frankenstein. So the third and final film I'm going to discuss today is another film called Frankenstein with an interesting spelling, stylized font here, that came out in 2015, based on the novel directed by Bernard Rose. The film is told from the monster's point of view as he is created, escapes into the modern world, and learns about the dark side of humanity. This stars Danny Huston and Carrie Ann Moss. I thought this one was really good. So in this film, like Frankenstein, A True Story, we have the creature who's born beautiful. He's like a baby. But as he learns and as he grows, he becomes deformed because the formula is not working. And Victor Frankenstein is like, well, we're going to have to, euthanize him because, and we got to start over again. So there's this idea of this is not a real human being that deserves compassion and love. This is just like an experiment that went wrong. We're going to get rid of him and start over again. Well, the creature fights back, finds his humanity, and escapes and becomes a homeless person living in the streets. And that's when he meets up with the blind man, played by Tony Todd, in an incredible performance, I have to say. One of the best Tony Todd performances I've ever seen. So this film is very good. It's also very dark. It has a much more of like a horror film. It's more like gore and violence, but it's very good. So I would recommend all three of these Frankenstein films. So let me know in the comments below if you've seen any of these films or if you have any other Frankenstein films you would like to recommend. So that's all I have for today. Thanks for stopping by my haunted library, and I'll see you soon. Bye.